China, the only nation boosting its nuclear arsenal, according to a U.S. commander. That plus a new kind of nuclear technology, and Beijing may get the rights to it. Drought in South China. Farmers say crops are failing as soaring temperatures take their toll. And the same heat wave sparking fires nearby a major city. Another U.S. politician visits Taiwan. This time, Indiana's governor is meeting with the island's president, plus its advanced chip-making companies. And Australian diplomacy taking a hit, with Chinese telecom company Huawei slated to build over 160 telecom towers in the nation's backyard. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The U.S. Indo-Pacific commander is warning that Beijing is seeking the largest military buildup in history since the Second World War. He adds that China's stockpiled nuclear arsenal poses a threat to the Indo-Pacific region. The commander, Admiral John Aquilino, says the only nation increasing the nuclear arsenal right now is the PRC. The PRC stands for the People's Republic of China, the country's formal name. He said China had 300 nuclear silos going in while the press conference was happening. The Pentagon estimated last year that Beijing could have up to 700 nuclear warheads by 2027. Continuing with nuclear technology, China operates 54 nuclear power reactors, and another 23 are currently under construction. That puts the country at second place for most nuclear reactors in the world. It trails behind the U.S., which has a whopping 93 nuclear reactors. But the world's nuclear list may shift as concerns over energy rise. Many countries are now weighing whether to revive their nuclear power plants. Though China seems to be taking it one step further. The Chinese Communist regime has been targeting an advanced nuclear power technique for years. In China's remote northwest, scientists successfully built a molten salt reactor, and they're about to power it up. Instead of using uranium, it's powered by thorium, another radioactive metal. The reactor will be the first of its kind. And if China sees success with using thorium in reactors for commercial use, Beijing may be able to gain full intellectual property rights for it. Despite its uniqueness, the technology behind it isn't new. The U.S.-based Oak Ridge National Laboratory operated a similar prototype in the 1960s. But conventional water-cooled reactors were put in use instead. An intense heat wave is scorching China's Yangtze River basin. It's lasted more than 2 months, and it's putting harvest season in jeopardy. Here's what a Chinese farmer had to say about what it means for this year's crops.
68-year-old farmer Chen Shaohua combs through his plot of land in southwestern China. Normally, at this time in August, his sweet potato leaves would be growing thick and plentiful. Instead, they're burnt to a crisp under the sweltering sun.
All scorched, you see. Certainly cannot grow. The high temperature is slowly roasting the sweet potato leaves to death.
China's Yangtze River is quickly running dry amid a 2-month heat wave. And it's not the only one. 66 rivers across 34 counties in Chongqing region have dried up, according to state broadcaster CCTV. One district reached 113 degrees Fahrenheit on Friday, the hottest in the country. Rainfall is down 60% compared to the seasonal norm, putting the autumn harvest in jeopardy. China is taking emergency action, sending specialists to vulnerable regions to help allocate water resources. The Ministry of Water Resources put out a warning about deteriorating soil moisture in several provinces. Regional governments are being urged to draw up schedules for farms to take turns tapping what water remains. The fresh water Chen has been relying on from a nearby mountain stream has dwindled to nothing in recent days. He's turned to a nearby pond, carrying buckets of water every morning to try and save his crops. But the leaves and stems continue to die. Chen says he hasn't seen the temperatures this high since a historical heat wave over a half-century ago.
This year is drier than 1960. The temperature is higher this year. It wasn't as high as this in 1960. The temperature is so high every day. We have to work in the morning. In the afternoon, we only stay in the house. We are afraid to go out.
The Yangtze River is the longest river in China and supports about a third of the country's population. Next, we head over to central China, where similar issues are cropping up. A farmer from Henan province highlights the trouble in a video, showing off wilted corn and peanut plants. He explains that this time of year is harvest season, but notes that this year, farmers' efforts have yielded virtually nothing.
这个河南的天气大旱，看一下咱们的花生，往年这个时候它都已经结果了，今年基本上是绝收了。看一下咱们的玉米，到现在连一个棒都没有。
He says the lack of water has plagued hundreds of acres of farmland in his village. Now an update on a different kind of emergency. Fires have broken out in the woods outside Chongqing city in recent days. That's as local temperatures soars to highs of 113 degrees Fahrenheit. The local weather station has issued its highest level heatwave warning for 11 days straight. The latest blaze ignited on Sunday in an area relatively nearby a residential zone. The fire was still burning as of Monday, though authorities have reported no casualties. For the third time in a month, a high-level U.S. politician is visiting Taiwan. Indiana's governor met with Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen on Monday. Also on the schedule, talks with Taiwanese semiconductor companies. Here's more.
Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb arrived in Taiwan on Sunday. His trip follows two high-profile visits by U.S. politicians earlier this month: House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and five-member delegation.
Taiwan has been confronted by military threats from China in and around Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait. At this moment, Democratic allies must stand together and boost cooperation across all areas.
Holcomb termed his visit an economic development trip.
Because we share so many common values and interests and goals, there are more opportunities ahead of us than I think there ever have been before for us to continue to strengthen and cultivate and nurture this relationship as our economies grow and grow together.
His four-day visit will focus on economic exchange. That's set to include a visit to local semiconductor companies and signing trade agreements. Taiwan is home to the world's largest contact chip maker, TSMC. The company is currently building a $12 billion plant in Arizona State.
Tencent isn't a household name in America, but for those who play video games, the company may sound familiar. The Chinese tech company is quietly growing its ownership of the world's largest game developers. NTD's Arlene Richards has more on the story.
Chinese tech giant Tencent has been quietly buying a significant share of the world's biggest video game companies. In the first half of 2021, it completed one game-related deal every 2.5 days. It owns 100% of Riot Games, which means it owns the super popular League of Legends. It owns 40% of Epic Games, which is home to smash hit Fortnite, as well as majority, minority, and undisclosed shares in a ton of other firms.
Any company in China is completely controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and must support the Chinese Communist Party's direction and goals.
Casey Fleming is the CEO of Black Ops Partners, a global risk strategy and counterintelligence firm. Fleming says any technology coming from China is a weaponized technology.
It's weaponized to weaken the United States and the values of the West. And the name of that is called hybrid warfare, to weaken your adversary and make you stronger.
Fleming believes China wants to influence people who play video games, such as children with pro-China, pro-communist values.
The amount of say that Tencent has in any individual game changes game to game. It's this constant push and pull between what the audience want, what the original developers want, and then what the executives want.
Josh Strife Hayes is the host of the Josh Strife Hayes YouTube channel, where he plays and reviews video games. As for pro-CCP propaganda,
I don't know if we have any specific proof of that happening yet, or any games that have said they are overtly doing it. If anything like that happened, then the internet, especially sites like Reddit or IGN, would likely be reporting on these kind of things.
He says Tencent has generally been associated with monetization. They frequently lock the best parts of a game behind a paywall, which players find unfair. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
China is unloading even more treasury bonds. At the same time, other countries are buying more U.S. debt. This, according to the Treasury Department's data. In June, China owed nearly $970 billion in U.S. debt. That figure is down $12 billion compared to May, meaning Beijing has been dumping its holdings for 7 consecutive months. China's ownership of U.S. debt hit multiple 12-year lows over the past few months. China is the second largest owner of U.S. debt. Japan is by far the largest. Different than China, the U.S. ally increased its holding by $8 billion in June to $1.2 trillion. In third place is the UK with $615 billion. In total, foreign ownership of U.S. debt rose by $4 billion to $7.4 trillion. Chris Turner, global head of the markets at financial services company ING Group, commented on the shift. He says Beijing's sell-off aims to keep Chinese currency stable in a strong dollar environment. A new deal between China and the Solomon Islands. Under it, Chinese telecom giant Huawei would build over 160 telecom towers in the island nation. To pay for the project, the Solomon Islands would take an over $60 million loan from a Chinese state-owned bank over 20 years. The deal is a step further in China's relationship with the Solomon Islands. The island nation has been a point of contention between the U.S., China, and Australia. That has to do with its location. It has deep ports ideal for military bases and used to host a strategic headquarters for Japan and the UK when they controlled the Pacific. Back in World War II, the Solomon Islands was also a critical battlefield between the Allies and Japan. And this April, the West was put on alert after Beijing signed a security deal with the Solomon Islands. World powers like the U.S. and Australia are concerned that the deal could pave the way for a Chinese military base there, just 1,000 miles off the coast of Australia. The U.S. and Australia ramped up their diplomatic engagement with the Solomon Islands following the deal. But China hasn't been sitting idly either. Months after the security deal, a Chinese state-owned company reached out to buy a forestry plantation on the Solomon Islands, though the Chinese buyer showed little interest in the trees. Instead, it asked detailed questions about the nearby deep water port. Back to the Telecom's tower deal. It marks a blow for Australia's diplomatic efforts. Australia has been trying to stop Huawei from setting foot on the Solomon Islands, and it specifically bankrolled an undersea cable to the Solomon Islands to outbid Huawei. It's also funding 6 towers in the Solomon Islands, compared to Huawei's over 160 towers. What's more, concerns regarding Huawei equipment extend beyond Australia. In the U.S., Washington is also shelling out big money to kick Huawei out of America's telecom network. Washington says Huawei is a Trojan horse for Beijing and could use its gear to spy on Americans. An FBI investigation also found that Huawei has been setting up equipment on cell towers near American military bases. Many of those towers are in rural areas, so installing gear there is unlikely to turn a profit for the company. Some experts say that hints that the company has another purpose for pursuing them, like intel gathering. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. A Canadian billionaire gets sentenced to prison. He used to be one of China's wealthiest and was known for his connections to the country's political elites. And China's real estate sector is stuck in crisis mode. What's really happening? Brian McCarthy, chief strategist at MacroLens, breaks it down. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, promoting martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The 2022 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition preliminaries will be held in New York and Taiwan on On August 28th, the finals will be broadcast live online worldwide. Registration hotline 188-477-9228. For more information, please visit martialarts.ntdtv.com.